The night pressed close around her when Emma stepped out of the car. The quiet of the neighborhood was almost startling after the warmth of music and laughter at the party. Her heels tapped softly against the pavement as she walked toward her front door, the navy dress brushing against her knees. For the first time in months, she felt something unfamiliar and weightless, as though she had been reminded she was more than the sum of her routines. Inside, the living room glowed faintly with the amber light of a single lamp. The smell of fresh laundry mixed with old coffee hung in the air, the scent of home. Emma set her clutch on the table and exhaled, releasing the evening with one long breath. For hours she had been noticed, her smile acknowledged, her presence appreciated. At 43 she had nearly forgotten what it felt like to be seen. But her smile faltered when she noticed she wasn't alone. Daniel was there, her son, seated on the couch, posture tense, gaze fixed on her as if he had been waiting all night. The air shifted. Emma's heart tightened at the sight of him watching, unmoving, eyes carrying something she couldn't quite name. "Daniel?" she whispered, slipping off her shoes. "Why are you awake?" His silence lasted too long. And when he finally spoke, his voice was calm but heavy, deliberate. "I was waiting for you." The word settled in her chest like a stone. She expected a casual reason, a smile, a laugh, but his eyes were unwavering. They studied her not with the glance of a boy, but the searching intensity of someone carrying unspoken truths. "You look different tonight," he said at last. Emma froze. "Different? How? I saw you before you left," Daniel continued, his voice soft but certain. "You were radiant, glowing, like someone who still has a life beyond this house. And when you came back, I could still see it. And I realized something. You're not just my mom, you're a woman too." His words rippled through the room, breaking the silence open. Emma's pulse quickened, a storm rising inside her she hadn't prepared for. She tried to steady herself with a laugh, brushing it away. "I just went to a party, Daniel. You're making it sound bigger than it was." But he didn't look away. His gaze cut through her defenses. "You give everything to everyone and no one ever gives back to you. That's not fair. I see you carrying everything, pretending it's enough. But it isn't. You've been lonely." Emma's throat closed. She wanted to deny it, to claim strength, but his voice carried too much truth. The walls she had built over years, strong, necessary walls, trembled under the weight of his honesty. Her voice was barely audible. "Sometimes, yes, but that isn't your burden to carry." Daniel leaned forward, elbows on his knees, hands clenched. "But I see it. I can't ignore it. I don't want you to disappear behind roles and responsibilities. You deserve to feel alive, to feel cherished, to be more than invisible." The words pierced her like light through glass. Emma sat down across from him, her knees brushing the table. She studied his face, the boy she had raised now speaking with the conviction of a man. His truths shook her, they frightened her, and yet she couldn't stop listening. "Daniel," she whispered, tears stinging her eyes, "you're breaking down walls I thought would protect me. You're saying things I've buried for years." His gaze softened. "Then maybe you needed to hear them." The silence that followed was louder than words. The ticking of the clock marked the seconds as Emma tried to catch her breath, her chest rising and falling too quickly. His words had awakened something raw inside her, something she had silenced beneath years of self-sacrifice. She pressed a trembling hand to her chest. "I don't even know what I'm feeling right now, only that your words, they've shaken me." Daniel's reply was quiet but steady. "Then let them. Don't hide anymore. Don't pretend." Emma felt the room tilt, smaller now, filled with an intensity she couldn't escape. She wanted to end the moment, to retreat, but her body remained frozen in place, her heart loud, uncontainable. She whispered, almost to herself, "I don't feel like the same woman who left for that party. Something's changed in me." And in the silence that followed, Emma knew her son was right. She could no longer hide from her own longing to be seen. She was not invisible. She was still alive. Emma rose from her chair, her breath uneven, pacing the length of the room as if motion could steady her trembling heart. Her heels clattered faintly against the hardwood, and the sound filled the silence between them. Daniel did not move, but his eyes followed her every step, heavy with questions he hadn't spoken aloud. house felt different now. It wasn't just the quiet or the dim glow of the lamp. It was as if the walls themselves leaned in, pressing closer, demanding she face what had been left unsaid for too long. Emma turned, her hand grazing the curtain, her reflection caught faintly in the darkened window. "You shouldn't carry this, Daniel," she murmured. "You're too young to see me this way." He leaned back, jaw tense. "I can't unsee it. I've watched you for years, Mom. Pretending you're fine. Pretending your smile means something it doesn't. And tonight, you came back alive. That glow, it's still on you. I don't want it to fade." Her throat tightened at his words. She pressed her hand against the glass, cool under her palm, grounding her. "Alive," she repeated softly, almost as if testing the sound. "When was the last time I felt alive?" Daniel stood then, the air shifting with his movement. He didn't step closer, but his presence filled the room. "You deserve more than survival, more than being the background of everyone else's story." She turned, meeting his gaze. For a moment she didn't see the boy she raised. She saw someone mirroring her pain, someone bold enough to speak what she could not. Her lips parted, but no words came. The clock on the wall ticked loudly, marking each second of silence. Emma's heart matched its rhythm, hard and uneven. She sank back onto the couch, her hands clasped tightly in her lap, fighting the sting of tears. "Why now?" she asked finally, her voice a whisper. "Why tonight, of all nights, do you tell me this?" Daniel's voice was steady, unshaken. "Because tonight showed me what you've been missing, and I couldn't keep pretending I don't notice. I've stayed silent long enough." Emma's chest ached with the weight of his honesty. She looked at him, her eyes searching for hesitation, for doubt, but there was none. His conviction was sharper than any blade. She inhaled slowly, trying to anchor herself. "I don't even know who I am anymore, Daniel. I've been mother, caretaker, provider, everything but myself. I buried the woman I used to be." His eyes softened. "Then dig her up, bring her back. She's not gone. I saw her tonight." Emma's breath caught, her hand instinctively reaching to her chest. Could it be true? That part of her still existed beneath the layers of sacrifice and exhaustion? The thought both terrified and exhilarated her. Her voice shook. "What if I don't know how?" Daniel's reply was almost a plea. "Then let yourself learn. Let yourself feel again. Stop hiding." The room thickened with silence once more, the weight of his words pressing down on her. Emma closed her eyes, the echoes of the party flashing in her mind, laughter, glances, touches on her arm, the reminder that she was still seen. When she opened her eyes again, tears slipped silently down her cheeks. She whispered, "I'm afraid of what comes if I let go." Daniel took a step forward this time, just one, careful, deliberate, "And I'm afraid of what happens if you don't." Her body stilled, her breath shallow. She felt cornered, not by him, but by the truth. Every word had stripped away the illusions she clung to. There was nowhere left to hide. Emma buried her face in her hands, trembling. "You don't know what it feels like to give everything until nothing's left." His voice cut through the darkness. "Maybe not. But I know what it feels like to watch someone you love disappear in plain sight." The words struck her like thunder. She lowered her hands slowly, her face pale, eyes wide. "Disappear," she repeated. "That's what I've done, isn't it?" Daniel's silence was answer enough. Her gaze drifted toward the staircase, the shadows stretching long against the wall. For years, this house had been her prison as much as her refuge. Each room carried memories of sacrifice, of silence, of invisibility. And now, in the living room, her son's voice had shattered that illusion. Emma whispered into the thick air, "I don't know how to be seen without breaking." Daniel's voice softened, almost a whisper. "Then break. Sometimes breaking is the only way to be whole again." Her breath trembled at his words. She turned away, staring at the lamp's dim light. How had this night unraveled so quickly? How had a party, a simple evening out, opened wounds she thought long buried? She stood again, restless, pacing once more. Her fingers trailed along the edge of the wall, searching for something solid. "Daniel, you've left me with no escape." He watched her carefully, his eyes unwavering. "Maybe escape isn't what you need. Maybe it's time you face yourself." Emma froze mid-step. His words echoed in her chest like a heartbeat too loud to ignore. She turned, her eyes glassy, her lips trembling. For the first time in years, she felt utterly bare. Stripped of her masks, her defenses, her practiced strength, in her son's voice she heard not judgment, but raw, undeniable truth. Emma's fingers lingered on the fabric of the curtain, clutching it as though it might anchor her. The weight in her chest was unbearable, yet she couldn't bring herself to look away from Daniel. His presence was steady, immovable, as if he had planted himself as her mirror, refusing to let her hide from her reflection. She sank slowly into the armchair by the window, her hands trembling against the armrests. For the first time in years, she felt like a stranger in her own home. The room around her, the bookshelves, the framed photographs, the muted lamp, all seemed to belong to someone else, someone who had spent years fading into the background. Daniel didn't speak right away. He sat back down on the couch, but his posture remained taut, his eyes fixed on her. The silence between them was not empty. It was heavy, filled with unspoken truths pressing to the surface. Emma's voice finally cracked through the stillness. "Do you know how hard it is to look at yourself and see nothing but duty? To see the years gone, the sacrifices made, and to wonder if any of it left room for me?" Daniel leaned forward, his elbows resting on his knees. His tone was quiet but unwavering. "I know you feel trapped in that role. I've watched it consume you, but I need you to understand something, Mom. You're not invisible to me. Not now, not ever." Her throat tightened at his words. She bit her lip, trying to steady her breath, but the tears welled again, hot and insistent. "You don't understand. I built walls because I had to. If I let them fall, I might unravel completely." His gaze sharpened. "Maybe that's what needs to happen. Maybe you've held yourself together for so long that you've forgotten what it feels like to be alive, to feel, to break and rebuild." Emma shook her head, her curls falling loose around her face. "Breaking terrifies me. What if I can't put myself back together?" Daniel's voice softened. "Then let someone help you. You don't always have to carry it alone." Her breath hitched. She turned away, staring at the shadows along the floor. His words dug into her chest, unearthing the loneliness she had buried beneath routines and responsibilities. To admit it was to risk drowning in it. The silence stretched until Emma whispered, almost to herself, "I don't even know what I want anymore." Daniel's reply was immediate. "Then start by wanting to exist, to be seen, to be more than a role." She pressed her hand to her mouth, stifling the sob that threatened to escape. Every word he spoke felt like a blade cutting through her defenses. She wanted to protest, to tell him he was wrong, but she couldn't. Deep down, she knew he was right. Her body trembled as she finally whispered, "I don't know if I remember how to be anything but this." Daniel's eyes softened with something almost like sorrow. "Then let this be the night you remember." Emma closed her eyes, the room spinning around her. She could still hear the laughter from the party echoing faintly in her mind, the way people had looked at her, noticed her, reminded her she was still a woman with presence. For a fleeting moment she had felt alive, and now Daniel had named the very thing she tried so hard to bury. Her eyes flew open, sharp with fear. "You don't realize what you're asking. You're asking me to confront everything I've avoided for years, to peel back layers I've built out of survival." Daniel's voice was calm, certain. "I'm asking you to stop disappearing." She gripped the arm of the chair, knuckles white. His words echoed again and again inside her, until her breath felt like fire in her lungs. "Stop disappearing," she repeated, as if testing the sound. Her gaze shifted to the family photographs on the wall. Daniel as a child, his milestones, his laughter frozen in time. She had poured everything into those years, given every ounce of herself to build his world. And in doing so, she had erased her own. The weight of it pressed down on her chest until she whispered, "I don't know who I am without sacrifice." Daniel's eyes glistened as he leaned closer. "Then maybe it's time you find out." Emma pressed her face into her hands again, her body shaking. She felt as though the walls were closing in, not in suffocation, but in truth. There was nowhere left to hide, no illusion left to cling to. Her tears slipped freely now, dampening her palms. She whispered into the quiet, "I don't want to keep living like this. I don't want to vanish piece by piece." Daniel's reply was steady, carrying the weight of both plea and command. "Then don't. Let yourself be more. Let yourself be seen." Her shoulders trembled as she exhaled, the sound breaking like glass. She couldn't meet his eyes, not yet. His words cut too deep, his gaze too piercing. But she felt the truth of it, that if she didn't change, she would keep dissolving until nothing was left. The lamp flickered, shadows shifting across the room, and Emma felt as though even the house itself was holding its breath. Finally, she lifted her face, streaked with tears, her voice barely audible. "What if I don't deserve more?" Daniel's answer came like thunder. "You do, more than anyone I know. You've given everything, and it's time you allow yourself to receive." Emma's breath stilled. Something cracked open inside her then, something she couldn't name. The tears fell silently, not from despair, but from the recognition that she had been starving for words like these. Emma leaned back, her body sinking deeper into the armchair, as though the fabric might swallow her whole. She felt exposed, stripped bare by words that had peeled away the armor she'd worn for so many years. The quiet pressed against her chest, demanding a response, but her voice failed her. All she could do was look at Daniel, the weight of his gaze burning into her like a torch in the dark. He shifted forward, closing the space between them. Not too close, not invasive, but enough to make her feel the gravity of his presence. His voice dropped, softer now, a whisper carrying more force than any shout. "You've carried everyone else's burdens, Mom. When will you let yourself carry your own?" Her throat tightened. She wanted to argue, to dismiss him with a practiced smile and a deflection, but the words died before they could form. For the first time, she realized how tired she truly was. Not just physically, but bone-deep, soul-weary tired. The kind of exhaustion that seeps into your identity until you no longer know who you are. "I'm scared," she admitted, her voice a quiver, almost childlike. If I let go, what if I lose control?" Daniel's reply was immediate, steady. "Maybe losing control is the only way you'll ever find yourself again." The words hit her like a strike of lightning. She turned her face away, her eyes darting to the window where the night pressed against the glass. The city beyond seemed distant, muted, as though her world had shrunk to this single room, this single conversation. Her fingers fumbled with the hem of her dress, twisting the fabric nervously. She hated how vulnerable she felt, how his presence seemed to strip her of the composure she so carefully maintained. Yet at the same time, there was something intoxicating about it. The rawness, the exposure, the sense of being seen without filters. Daniel leaned back, giving her a moment to breathe. His eyes never wavered, though. They followed her every movement, not with judgment, but with an intensity that made her feel as if every breath mattered. Emma finally let out a shaky laugh, bitter at the edges. "You make it sound so simple, like peeling away decades of armor is just a choice." His lips curved, not in amusement, but in something close to sorrow. "It isn't simple, but it is necessary. You've lived half a life hiding from yourself. Don't let the other half disappear the same way." The words struck something deep inside her chest, and for a moment she felt her heart squeeze painfully, as though it might burst. She looked at him then, truly looked at him, and saw not just her son, but the man who had grown from her sacrifices, the man who stood before her now refusing to let her vanish. Her eyes shimmered with fresh tears. "You don't know how heavy it is, Daniel. You don't know what it's like to always be strong because there's no other option." He leaned forward again, his voice firm, almost pleading. "Then stop carrying it alone. Share it. Break. Cry. Scream if you have to. Just don't lock yourself away anymore." The desperation in his tone shook her. It wasn't just her own pain she heard. It was his too. He wasn't speaking only for her sake, but for his. He was tired of watching her fade, tired of being powerless to stop it. Emma's breath came ragged, her chest rising and falling unevenly. Her hand reached instinctively to her throat, as if to hold herself together. "You think it's that easy?" she whispered. Daniel's eyes softened, but his words remained unyielding. "I don't think it's easy. I think it's worth it." Her lips parted, but no sound came. She wanted to argue, to deny him, but something inside her cracked instead. The dam she had built, brick by brick, through years of silence and suppression, was splintering under the weight of his gaze. For the first time in years, she felt the possibility of release, terrifying, dangerous, but alive. The room around them seemed to fade, the ticking clock, the hum of the fridge in the next room, the faint sounds of the city outside. All that remained was the electric stillness between them, a fragile line stretched taut, threatening to snap. Emma finally whispered, barely audible, "I don't want to disappear anymore." Emma's breath shivered in her chest, as though her body wasn't quite sure how to carry the weight of this new truth. She sat motionless, staring at Daniel, afraid that if she moved, the fragile connection between them might shatter. The room was heavy with silence, but not the kind that suffocates. This was a silence alive with unspoken words, a silence that vibrated between them like a thread drawn tight. Her hands trembled in her lap, and instinctively she clasped them together, pressing her palms until her knuckles whitened. She had lived her life keeping herself stitched together, neat, composed, untouchable, yet now, under the intensity of his gaze, every stitch threatened to unravel. She could feel herself tearing at the seams, and though it terrified her, she could not deny the strange, almost liberating pull of it. Daniel leaned back slightly, but his eyes never left her. He didn't push, didn't demand. He simply held space, as though his very presence was an invitation for her to step into the truth she had long denied. "You've been hiding behind strength for so long," he said quietly, "but strength isn't never breaking. It's what you do when you've already broken." His words wrapped around her, and Emma felt her throat tighten, her heart ache in a way she hadn't allowed it to in years. She wanted to resist, to shield herself once more, but something about the way he said it, gentle yet unyielding, made the resistance crumble before it even formed. She shifted her gaze downward, unable to bear the intensity of his stare. The floor seemed safer, something solid to focus on while her mind spiraled. But even then, she could feel the weight of his attention, grounding her, refusing to let her drift away. Her voice came out fragile, more fragile than she intended. "I don't even know who I am without the walls, without the armor." Daniel's response was immediate, firm. "Then maybe it's time to find out. Maybe it's time to let yourself be seen for the first time, even if it's messy, even if it's raw." Emma swallowed hard. The thought of being seen like that, imperfect, vulnerable, stripped of all her defenses, made her chest tighten with fear. Yet, at the same time, a quiet flicker of hope stirred inside her. Could she really allow herself that freedom? Could she trust him with all the pieces she had kept hidden, even from herself? She looked up again, her eyes locking with his. The air between them thickened, almost tangible, as though the room itself was holding its breath, waiting. She whispered, barely more than a breath, "And if I can't?" Daniel leaned forward then, his expression fierce, resolute. "Then I'll hold you until you can. I'll carry the pieces until you're ready to carry them yourself. But don't tell me you can't. Not while I'm here. Not while I refuse to let you disappear." The conviction in his voice shook her. For years, she had been the one carrying others, the one offering strength, the one who could not afford to falter. Now, sitting across from him, she realized she wasn't alone anymore. He wasn't asking, he was declaring it, that he would not let her fade, not into silence, not into shadows. Emma's breath came unsteady, her lips parting as though to respond, but no words came. Instead, a tear slipped down her cheek, warm against her cool skin. She hadn't cried like this in years, not silently, not without restraint. Daniel didn't move to wipe it away. He let her have the moment, let her feel it, but his eyes followed every drop as though each one carried the weight of years unspoken. And for the first time, Emma realized she didn't need to hold herself together anymore. Not here, not now, not with him. Emma's chest rose and fell unevenly as if each breath was too heavy to hold. She gripped the couch cushion beside her, anchoring herself to something solid, anything that wouldn't collapse under the weight of what she was feeling. But the fabric beneath her fingers felt too soft, too fragile, a mirror of her own unraveling heart. She turned her head, forcing her gaze away from him, but even then, she could sense Daniel's presence pressing gently against her, like warmth seeping through the cracks in a cold wall. His silence was steady, not the kind that judged or condemned, but the kind that waited patiently, allowing her the space she had never been granted before. Her lips parted, her voice barely audible. "You don't know how long I've been tired, not just from life, but from myself, from pretending." Daniel's jaw tightened, and his eyes softened at once, a strange balance of control and tenderness. "Then stop pretending, Mom. At least here. At least with me. You don't have to wear that mask when it's just us." The words landed deep inside her, striking a place so tender she almost flinched. She had never let anyone see beyond the polished surface she wore for the world. The dependable Emma, the strong Emma, the mother who never faltered. And yet, here he was, stripping all of it away with nothing more than truth. Emma's throat constricted. She wanted to push back, to say he couldn't understand, that he was too young, too close, too much. But when she turned her eyes back to him, she saw no judgment, no childish naivety. What she saw was a man, her son, yes, but a man nonetheless, looking at her with an intensity that made her feel alive and fragile all at once. Her pulse quickened, every beat echoing in her ears. "You make it sound so easy," she whispered. Daniel leaned closer, his elbows resting on his knees, his voice low and unwavering. "It isn't easy. It's terrifying. But it's real. And sometimes the hardest thing you can do is let yourself be real with someone who sees you." Her breath caught at that. Someone who sees you. For years she had longed for that, to be noticed not just as a role, not just as a function, but as a woman, as a soul. And the ache of hearing it now from him was almost unbearable. Her hand trembled in her lap, and without thinking she lifted it halfway, as if to reach for him. But she froze midway, her fingers hovering in the empty air. The gesture alone felt too dangerous, too intimate. She let her hand fall back, curling into herself once more. Daniel noticed. His eyes flickered briefly to her hand, then back to her face. He didn't call attention to it, but the weight of his silence made her feel as though he had touched her anyway. She closed her eyes, whispering, "Why now? Why tonight of all nights?" He inhaled slowly, steadying himself. "Because tonight, when I saw you walk out the door, I realized how much I'd taken you for granted. I realized you've lived so long for everyone else, and almost no one has lived for you. I couldn't stand it anymore. I couldn't let you go on thinking you were invisible." Her tears threatened again, burning hot at the corners of her eyes. His voice was too sure, too certain, as if he had been waiting years to say this. And the thought of him holding on to these feelings for so long made her ache in a way she didn't have words for. Emma's body leaned forward slightly, almost against her will, as though her heart was pulling her toward him, while her mind screamed to hold back. She studied him. The tension in his jaw, the flicker of determination in his gaze, the quiet storm in his expression. Emma pressed the back of her hand against her lips, trying to steady the tremor there. She could feel the tension in the room thickening, wrapping itself around her like a weighted blanket she couldn't throw off. Every second of silence seemed to magnify the pull between them, a pull she both feared and craved. Daniel didn't move, though his presence seemed to expand, filling every corner of the dimly lit room. The lamp cast shadows across his face, highlighting the sharp line of his jaw, the steady fire in his eyes. He wasn't just looking at her. He was holding her there, as if daring her to vanish back behind the mask she'd worn for decades. Her breath came shallow, uneven. "I don't know if I can do this," she murmured, her voice raw. Daniel's reply was soft but unwavering. "You don't have to do it all at once. Just let yourself be here. With me, that's enough." She let out a bitter laugh, though it cracked halfway through. "You make it sound so simple. You don't know how many years I've been holding myself together. If I let go now, I don't know if I'll ever stop breaking." His voice deepened, steady, grounding. "Then break. Let it out. I'll be here when the pieces fall. I won't let you be swallowed by it." Her chest tightened painfully, a sob caught in her throat. She hadn't let anyone speak to her like this, hadn't let anyone insist on her worth, in so long that it felt foreign, dangerous, and yet, hearing it now, something inside her ached with recognition, like a wound she had forgotten was there until someone touched it. Emma turned her face toward him again, her eyes wet, her voice barely audible. "Why do you care so much?" Daniel leaned forward, his gaze fierce, his tone cutting through the fragile air between them. "Because I see you, Mom. Not the perfect, untouchable woman you pretend to be. You. The one who's hurting, the one who's tired, the one who deserves to be more than just a role." Her breath caught, and the tears finally spilled over. She raised her hands to cover her face, ashamed of how easily the walls were collapsing. But before she could completely retreat, she felt the warmth of his hand on hers, gently lowering it away. Her heart raced wildly. His touch wasn't forceful, it was careful, almost reverent. but it shattered something inside her all the same. She let him move her hand, and for the first time in years she didn't fight against being seen. Emma's voice broke, hoarse and uneven. "I don't know how to be that person anymore." Daniel's eyes searched hers, his thumb brushing softly across the back of her hand. "Then let me remind you. Let me show you. You don't have to carry it alone." The closeness between them was electric now, so tangible that Emma felt as if the room itself was holding its breath. She wanted to pull back, to retreat into safety, but her body betrayed her, leaning ever so slightly forward, her heart pounding against her ribs. Her mind screamed of boundaries, of lines never meant to be crossed, but her soul whispered of connection, of being seen, of being alive. And in that war she sat trembling, suspended in the fragile space between fear and surrender. Emma's throat burned with the effort of holding back, but the tears came anyway, sliding warm and unbidden down her cheeks. She didn't try to stop them this time. She let them fall, let herself feel the ache she had caged for so long. Her shoulders shook once, and she clutched the fabric of her dress to keep from completely unraveling. Daniel didn't move at first. He let her cry, let her release the years of silence that clung to her like chains. But when her sobs grew ragged, when her breath caught as though she might break apart entirely, he reached out again, his hand resting carefully over hers. His grip was gentle, steady, an anchor pulling her back from the storm. Emma flinched at the contact, not from discomfort, but from the sharp intimacy of being touched at her most fragile. She had grown so used to protecting herself that the simple warmth of his hand felt almost unbearable. Yet she didn't pull away. She let the contact linger, trembling beneath it. Her voice came in broken fragments. "I don't know who I am anymore. I've spent so long being what everyone needed me to be, I forgot how to just be me." Daniel leaned closer, his eyes steady, unwavering. "Then let yourself remember. Even if it's painful, even if it's messy, you deserve to know yourself again. Not the mask, not the shell, you." She blinked up at him, her lashes damp with tears, her vision blurred. The determination in his gaze startled her, almost frightened her, because it was the first time she realized how deeply he meant every word. He wasn't speaking out of pity. He was speaking out of a fierce, unrelenting love she had never truly allowed herself to accept. Her lips trembled. "And if I can't find her?" Daniel's hand squeezed hers, his voice firm, resonant. "Then I'll help you look. I'll keep looking until you see what I see." The words pierced her like light breaking through darkness. For so long she had begged, silently, to be noticed. And now here he was, refusing to let her fade, refusing to let her vanish into the background of her own life. Emma's body leaned forward before her mind could catch up. The movement was slight, hesitant, but undeniable, a silent surrender to the gravity pulling her toward him. She caught herself, her breath sharp, her heart hammering as though she had stepped too close to the edge. Daniel didn't close the gap. He held still, giving her room to breathe, his eyes never leaving hers. The restraint in him only heightened the weight of the moment, making the air between them hum with tension. She whispered, almost to herself, "It feels like if I let go now, I'll never go back to who I was." His answer came without hesitation. "Good. Don't go back. That woman was surviving. You deserve to live." The words lodged in her chest, sharp and tender all at once. Emma closed her eyes briefly, letting them sink in, before opening them again to meet his gaze. And in that gaze, she didn't see a boy. She didn't see a role. She saw a mirror, someone holding up her reflection and refusing to let her turn away. Her breath quivered as silence stretched between them once more. The clock ticked faintly in the background, but its sound seemed distant, irrelevant. The only thing that mattered was this fragile, dangerous stillness, this precipice she stood upon with him. Emma's body trembled under the weight of the moment. Her pulse thundered in her ears, loud enough that she wondered if Daniel could hear it too. She wanted to speak, to say anything that might release the pressure building in her chest, but the words tangled on her tongue, caught between fear and yearning. The lamplight flickered faintly, casting soft shadows over the walls, painting the room in shades of gold and gray. The air felt thick, dense, alive with something unspoken. Emma clutched the edge of the armchair as if she might drift away without something solid to hold. Daniel leaned just slightly forward, his elbows resting on his knees, his gaze fixed firmly on her. He didn't touch her again, didn't force the space to close, but his presence was enough. His silence was an invitation, not a command. He was waiting, patient but unrelenting, for her to choose. Her throat constricted, her voice breaking into the silence. "You make me feel like I'm standing at the edge of something I can't see, and I'm terrified of falling." Daniel's reply came low, calm but charged with conviction. "Then fall, Mom. I'll catch you, I promise." The simplicity of it pierced her. Tears welled up again, unbidden, hot against her skin. She had spent so long being the one who caught everyone else, the one who carried the world while no one thought to ask what it cost her. And now, hearing those words she had secretly longed for, was almost too much to bear. Her breath hitched. She wanted to believe him, desperately. But a part of her still clung to the safety of her walls, afraid that if she let them crumble completely, she would be left with nothing but ruin. Emma's fingers twisted together in her lap, restless, betraying her nerves. She whispered, almost inaudible, "What if I'm too broken? What if I'm not worth saving?" Daniel's jaw tightened, his expression fierce in its certainty. "Don't you dare say that. You're worth more than you've ever let yourself believe. You're not broken, you're hurting. And there's a difference." The intensity of his words made her chest ache. She wanted to look away, but his eyes held her captive, pulling her deeper into a place she hadn't dared to step in years. Her lips parted, trembling. "I don't even know how to let someone hold me like that. I wouldn't know where to start." Daniel's voice softened, steady as stone. "Start here, start now. You don't need to know the rest." Emma inhaled sharply, the sound shaky, fragile. Her body leaned ever so slightly toward him again, her heart betraying her better judgment. The pull was undeniable, dangerous, and yet it filled her with something she hadn't felt in years, the raw, staggering awareness of being alive. The room seemed to collapse inward, shrinking until there was nothing but the two of them and the fragile thread of silence stretched taut between their breaths. For the first time, Emma let her shoulders sag, her body giving in to the weight she had carried alone for far too long. She didn't speak. She simply sat there, trembling, allowing the possibility of surrender to seep through the cracks of her defenses. Daniel didn't move closer, didn't break the fragile moment. He stayed still, steady, his presence like a shield around her unraveling. And in that stillness, Emma felt the ground shifting beneath her. Something inside her, long buried, long denied, was stirring awake. Every inch of her wanted to retreat, to slip back into the safe silence she had lived in for so many years, but every second spent in his presence pulled her further out, as though he were unraveling her without even touching her. Her voice trembled when it finally broke the quiet. "Do you have any idea what you're asking of me? To let go of everything I've built, everything that's kept me together? It's not just hard, Daniel, it feels impossible." Daniel didn't flinch, didn't waver. His voice came steady, quiet, but filled with the kind of gravity that left no room for argument. "It's not impossible. You've just never had anyone refuse to let you carry it alone. Until now." Emma's heart clenched painfully, as though his words had wrapped around it and squeezed. A part of her wanted to argue, to push him away with the practiced sharpness she used on everyone else when they got too close. But when she opened her mouth, the words died on her lips. Instead, all she could manage was a whisper. "And what if I let you in? And I can't find my way back?" Daniel leaned forward slightly, his gaze locking onto hers, unwavering. "Then we don't go back. We go forward, together." The word together rang in her ears, louder than the ticking clock, louder than her pulse thundering in her veins. It scared her. How much she wanted to believe it. How much she wanted to lean into the safety he was offering. Her hands curled tightly in her lap, nails pressing into her palms. She didn't realize she was shaking until Daniel reached out again, his hand brushing lightly against hers, not forcing, just resting there, patient and sure. The contact sent a shiver through her. She closed her eyes for a moment, her breath catching as though her body was betraying her with how much it craved the simple warmth. When she opened them again, Daniel was still watching her. Not with pity, not with judgment, but with a fierce tenderness that made her want to weep all over again. Emma swallowed hard, her voice breaking as she asked, Why won't you let me hide? Everyone else has. Daniel's answer was immediate, unshakable. Because I can't stand to see you disappear. Not when I know who you are. Not when I see what you're worth. Her throat closed up, too tight to let more words through. She stared at him, her tears blurring his features until all she could see was light and shadow, heat and resolve. Something inside her broke then, not the kind of break that destroys, but the kind that releases, like a dam finally giving way under the pressure of years. Her shoulders sagged, her body trembling as she whispered, "I'm so tired, Daniel. I don't want to be strong anymore." Daniel's hand closed over hers, firm but gentle, anchoring her. "Then don't be, not here, not with me. Let me be strong for you." Emma's tears fell freely now, her chest heaving with sobs she had buried for too long, and as she wept, she felt the faintest flicker of something she thought she had lost forever, the fragile possibility of being whole again.